Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great show for you about the glue that holds us all together with my special guest, Zigzagzilla. Thank you for being on.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on. Greetings, everyone. I won't be able to see the chats, just so you know. So I mean, if there's anything important, I'm sure Robert will let me know. But whoever does jump on, man, good to see you all.
Yeah, you're in the middle of that hurricane. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on there? By the way, why you're sitting in the car and the whole 9 yards. That's a good story in itself.
Yeah, I almost didn't make it on, man. I had to leave the house because a couple of the cell towers were affected. So I have no power for like the last 2 days. So pretty much everything in my fridge, everything is pretty much starting to turn into mush. So not a fun thing. And I don't think I'm gonna have power until like Tuesday or Wednesday. But I hope that they actually turn it on Monday instead. But we'll see what happens. I realized that I'm gonna be buying a generator because that's one of the absolute necessities down here in case something like this happens again. Because having no power is not comfortable.
Yes, that is.
So in order for me to get in this live, I had to like literally drive 20 minutes away just so that I can get internet reception.
Yeah, that's I guess it just boils down to that what would happen and when is the oh shit moment, kind of thing, all those bug out guys talk about, or all the preppers talk about it. You don't have to have World War III come along. You have to could be a hurricane, could be a big fire, an earthquake, it could be a natural disaster of any sort. When those things show up, could be a big bad thunderstorm.
Robert,
yes.
Hey, who's in the chat right now? Do you see anybody in the chat?
Yes, we got a few people. We got Nina the Mystic, Lucky Stone, and that's about it right now as far as I can see. But it says there's 8 people watching.
Can you ask them how's your audio?
Oh, okay, yeah. Can everybody hear me? We were having a little problem with audio. Said Dreamer's in the house. He says hi.
I can't understand anything.
I don't know if it's you.
Just in case you guys can't hear him, can you just let me know if he's having any audio problems? Because I can't hear a word he's saying right now.
Yes. Can everybody hear us? Help us out here. So Lucky says Robert's audio is perfect. There you go.
Okay.
What about Zigzags? You hear?
Maybe it's me, bro.
Yeah, maybe it is you. Richard the Red's in the house. He says, Robert, audio is great here. Maybe it's for both of us. Maybe it just seems garbled on your side. I don't know. Everybody says all good here. I hear you both fine, Nina says. So it's on your end. I guess that's what it is. Nina says, no, all good. All good. Lucky says, I hear Robert and Zigzag is fine, but sounds a little weird. Okay. So it's on your end. It's got to be on your end. That's all right. Nina says she hears no distortion at all. Okay, well, we'll go with that. Must be because of the hurricane. Just keep talking. You're fine.
I'm going to try to move from where I'm at because I'm not, I mean, you're here, you sound really like, it's like robotic.
Oh, well, I only sound robotic to you. Everybody else is hearing you just fine. Okay,
well, you sound good now. So for now, I think it's pretty good. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So right. Go tell us about the hurricane. Everybody's, I'm sure, excited to hear that.
Okay, so the hurricane was pretty brutal. So I've been in North Carolina. I mean, I lived in New York all my life. And, we don't do hurricanes up there the way we do down here. But the last 6 years or 7 years I've lived here, this is probably one of the worst ones I've had. As far as, torrential rains and, winds. I mean, I almost couldn't get out of my county because of knocked trees over in the middle of the roads and whatnot. But it was pretty disastrous. Power lines went down. I've had no power for the past 2 days. So Yeah, it's been a little rough. Everything in my refrigerator, even I told you I pick a bunch of blackberries and grapes and whatnot, so I freeze them and I make smoothies and juices out of them. But I mean, it's starting to look like mush, you know. So at
Yeah.
this point, I wish I had a generator, which is actually something that I told you I was willing to get now because I feel like it's a absolute necessity down here in case things like this happen again. But this storm was pretty bad.
Well, yeah, yeah, and that is so true. It's the storm is bad, and we were talking about being a prepper. Well, this is one of those things that tell people to be preppers. You don't have to have the end of the world coming to be a prepper because it might just be a hurricane. It might be a thunderstorm with a tornado, and it might be a wildfire. It might be anything, but are you prepared to last out for 3-4 days? And that's the big thing
Right.
is can you go 3 or 4 days? And you said the power they think might come on Tuesday. You said Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, somewhere between Tuesday and Wednesday, but I'm hoping that they get it back on by Monday. Like supermarkets, all businesses down here, they're all shut down. I'm actually right across the street from the supermarket that I normally shop at, and it's like off since that storm, and there's been no power at all. So, uh, I one thing I could do is I can fast for a pretty long time, so I'm not really too concerned with the food part. But at least I bought water, and that's it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable because we actually start to take for granted, and we're more in appreciation for the power that we do have.
Yes. Well, that's
I'm
kind
using
of what.
candles. I'm back in primitive time right now, using candles and flashlights.
Yeah, well, it's good that like I collect oil lamps. The
Yeah,
old kerosene oil lamps. It's good to have one
yeah,
of those around the house. They last forever. You can turn it on at night and it shines the whole room up. One of those will, I mean, for the little bit of fuel it uses, is wonderful to have.
yeah, yeah. I'm a little spoiled. Like I said, I'm from New York, and we don't experience things like that. So now, being down here, now I'm like, all right, I see a different world now. So this is actually
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
So from your perspective, this is very interesting to me, and I want to ask you a few questions about that. Is from your perspective as a New Yorker, you didn't see this stuff. It didn't really matter to you, did it?
No, not really. I mean, I mean, I hear about it. My sister's lived here for like 18 years. So I remember when I was living in New York and I would hear about certain storms, I would just like call her and whatnot. But it doesn't affect you at all. It's like you're in a totally different world. So it's not that I
Mhm.
didn't care or anything. It's just like when it doesn't affect you as much. I mean, what can you do?
Yes, yes, and that's kind of what our show is about. The glue that holds us all together.
Hmm.
When you don't believe or you don't care, it doesn't affect you. Nothing makes you stick together with those people, even though North Carolina there is just a short distance away from New York. It really ain't that far. I mean, it's far, but it's not that far.
No, it's not terribly far. I mean, by car, it's like an 11-hour drive.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Not
But
too bad. It's on the same side of it's on the East Coast, so it's not terribly off.
I
We're not in
know,
a
so
different time zone.
it should really bind people together more, but
Yeah,
it really doesn't. When you lived in a fixed environment like New York, where the power ain't going off and you know things are still running, the internet still works, everything is good. And yeah, sure, you might get a little wind and rain, and the wind comes through, but there's no trees and buildings falling down. There's no power outages. There's no this, that, the other. Um, makes you a little sheltered to what's really going on.
right. I like this topic. I mean, I've used this phrase in my videos a few times. The glue that holds everything together. Um, what do you think that is? That glue that holds everything together. What do you think that actually is?
You're probably not going to believe my answer. And I've talked
Uh,
about this with my buddy all week, and he knows, he's in the chat. He knows all week what we've been talking about, and
mhm.
it's propaganda. Propaganda holds
That's,
us.
you said that's the glue that holds it all together is the
The
propaganda.
propaganda and the belief in that propaganda, yeah,
Uh-huh.
which is what religion uses, what government uses, what cults use, what everything is. If being a Democrat or a Republican, it doesn't matter what it's what anybody puts out. Like the new style. If you think that Nike shoes is the in thing and you got to have it just like everybody else, that's your belief. And then you go out and buy the Nike shoes and you're in with the in crowd. You are holding together the glue like everybody else buying the Nike shoes. Maybe that's a poor example, but it's also the example with religion. Once the religion's out there, they put their propaganda up as one God is the greatest God. He does everything. If you don't believe in him, well, then you get to go to hell. And if not, well, we might do away with you. You ain't gonna get all the benefits that come with that. And then well, if I believe, then what do I get? Well, I get all this stuff, Well, I guess I'll
Yeah.
go with that. And then that binds you with all these other people. If you have one common belief, the propaganda, like, okay, for instance, you're in North Carolina and the people in New York, they get the propaganda that storm is coming. And then they get the propaganda that, hey, you need to help out these people in North Carolina. Then they would be more inclined to bond with you because their belief that they're helping you, they're making your life better. There's going to be some non-believers and some believers, and then they would care versus not caring at all. That's why people give to these places in foreign countries because they believe through that what they seen a little kid starving to death in a foreign country, and he's dying, and you think, well, if I give a little money, and he'll buy some rice and he will live. Oh boy, I'm a good person. I'm so good, because you had that belief because of that propaganda. Because you didn't even think for yourself, is that money going there? You didn't think about how bad, when you were in New York, you didn't think about the poor people in North Carolina and how bad they had no power, no food, sitting in their houses in the dark.
Yeah.
You probably didn't give two shits about it unless you had some skin in the game.
Right.
So what's your thoughts on that? And do you think I'm
Right. It's interesting. I haven't heard that point of perspective before. And it is interesting. It does make a lot of sense what you're saying as far as the propaganda and where people put the energy and belief and how it actually starts to glue certain things together. And by relatability, it binds you to a certain mental thought. But more like where I was coming from when I was talking about it, I don't know. I had this realization is more or less like when I was walking my garden, right? And I realized that even upon listening to things I've heard online about, let's say I'll give you an example. Like you got vegans and carnivores and how they argue. And, for example, vegans will bring up the arguments that, plants aren't sentient and that we can eat them or treat them differently than we do animals because they don't have a nervous system or, they don't have because they don't have a nervous system, they don't have a subjective experience. But on a deep level, I look at it like this, like we are basically the ones that are holding everything together. You ever notice that a person, just with their energy, they can basically become a destructive force wherever they go? It's kind of like somebody would say, oh, that person, wherever he goes, everything he touches turns to gold. There's just something about an individual where they go, they just kind of have things basically flourish around them or people don't. It depends. And when I say green thumb, this can go into many avenues. Like I'm looking at it from the heart space. Like when I walk my garden, okay, the plants don't have a nervous system. They don't have the same subjective experience as a cow does. But when you look at it, for example, I always see it as I am the influence in the environment in the garden, and that's how the plants react to me. So I'm basically the nervous system of the plants. to the point that even when we ingest certain psychoactive substances from certain plants, I don't even feel like we're the ones having it. I feel like that's just an effect of the plants having an experience through us, because we are the nervous system of the plants. That's why they react to certain people and they say, oh, that person has a green thumb around plants. You can go in nature in that way, but if you go in business, it's the same way. Some people just attract money, right? They have the right mindset, and somehow they got a green thumb for money as well. Now look at the heart chakra. The heart chakra is green. And I always say in my videos that the heart is a projector of the world that you live in. You get what I'm saying? And then when you have a heart-brain coherence, you have a well-fine oiled machine, which is basically what you would call the universe. All your organs and all your chakras, which are basically all mentalities and brains, are all working in harmony. And this is the influence that happens in society. So when you talk about propaganda, that's basically now tying into reality as looking at it prospectively or subjectively from like the concept of bad or good, when in actuality there is no bad and good, right? It just is. There's polar side of positive, and then there's the negative. We can look at that as the masculine and the feminine side of things. We can look at it as the electric side or the magnetic side, or the acidic side or the alkaline side. It's just, you got to find that neutral space to be able to know where to navigate. That's why I kind of like hold that name Zigzag very closely. But at the root core level, I look at it as the word love is a misunderstood word. And love is what's holding everything together, the glue that holds everything together. If I'm out in my garden and I got a loving frequency, the heart could be looked at as a love organ, but it could also be looked at as a warlike organ. Like you notice that the frequencies for the heart is the drums. But when you ever hear people back in the day, they were going to war, it was all about drums. So stuff like that, I kind of correlated as the heart is a war organ, but the heart is also a loving organ. But there's a lot more to the heart that we don't understand. Is not just something that pumps blood through your body, or there's a lot more to it. And once we have an understanding of it even having 40,000 neurons like your brain does and all that, you'll notice that you can actually think from that space. And when you have a heart-brain coherence, you use the logic, which is the masculine brain, tie that into the emotional side, and you have a fine chemistry happening outside of you, where whatever you deemed as bad, you can integrate that, because you're looking at it as your reflection, because you know that you're projecting whatever it is that you're experiencing as whatever is bad and good. So more or less, like, I feel like the world is going through a big shadow work right now, because if you notice, there's so many triggers, there's so many things that are happening, but people are not really centered in themselves. And when they see that they're centered in themselves, there's no need to be pointing fingers at anything outside of you. You can actually learn to integrate these things without actually having to externalize your power, because doing that is the same as worshiping a Christ outside of you when it's all within you anyway. That's why Christ, you see the image of Christ is always pointing to the heart. The heart is really the answer to basically everything that we're experiencing out here. So in a nutshell, to make it all as simple as possible, I look at the glue as basically love, the harmony that holds everything together. What's not in harmony breaks apart. You get what I'm saying? But it's not to say that breaking apart is bad. That's a death. But through that death, you can always rebuild a lot better and stronger, because you're going from a foundational level now. So that's why the world is going through the state that is going in now, is basically dismantling things, dismantling the propaganda, dismantling the corruption, and we can actually see through the veil, through the cracks. You can see things a lot clearer. So yeah, I hope that answered the question of where I see it from. It may be a little bit different than yours, but I feel like they both work.
Well, they do, and that's the thing is, from my perspective, I thought about it a lot to figure it all out. But Mary Wins agrees with it. She says love is the glue. Yes, and here's a thought. I had one of the listeners write me an email and tell me about this, and talking about love, and said, when I was young, my mother beat me. And as she beat me, she says, I'm doing this because I love you. She says, well, I wish she didn't love me so much. But I'm thinking, so, love can be used in different ways. Is it that butterfly feeling I got when I was a young man, falling in love with my first or second, third, and fourth girlfriend along the way, thinking, oh God, this is the one. I love her so much. have that pit in my stomach and I miss her every single minute? Or is it the love that I have for my dog, that I care about so much? That's a different type of love? And now that I'm older, it seems like I don't get those butterflies, and I have a different feeling of love towards my animals, and I have a different feeling of love towards people, and things have changed. I don't get those butterflies, and I don't feel like that. Maybe there's something wrong on my part, but that type of love just doesn't bind me to things. I'm more mental and more mathematical or scientific about stuff. I don't let my brain run away with my heart to believe in something, only to find out that later on I jumped to conclusions way too fast, and because I felt it in my heart and I didn't with my brain.
That's interesting you mentioned that. One of the things that I've noticed here also with the whole, butterflies in your stomach and whatnot, a lot of the times, I feel like this is coming down to just reconnecting with your inner child. I know this sounds cliche and woo-woo. It sounds like something that a lot of people already talk about. I just feel like people sometimes say these things, but I don't think they really sit and like contemplate these things. But when you connect to your inner child, man, these things that you used to feel at one point, they come back. But the whole thing is, like you said, that logical and that masculine side, the adult side tends to always want to override, because look at how we act with children sometimes. We think that we can control a child, when in actuality the right way is more or less like guiding a child. But when you guide a child, they're actually showing you sometimes more than you can actually believe that they are actually showing you. It's like everything. That's why I mentioned it at one time that it doesn't matter what you're listening to, even in propaganda, the news, whatnot. It could be coming from the most stupidest person in the world. Everything is talking to you. Just the same way the trees, nature, everything, animals, they all communicate with you in certain ways. It just sometimes doesn't come through in English language. But sometimes we have to be able to read these things. But in actuality, everything outside of you is talking to you. But I don't know, man. I'll tell you right now, this connecting to the inner child thing, I was really deep into this at one point, because I noticed that just things started to surface up, things maybe even like traumas from back in the day and whatnot, but certain things that are even that felt really good started to surface up, and I'm like, wow. But I had to put the adult side, it kind of offline. And I feel like that's the conscious mind to some extent. So you connect to that, subconscious side of everything you've experienced, things start to surface up, but it's not going to come up where you're forcing memory. Sometimes you just have to relax and these things just come up naturally. More or less also when you were talking about the love part, I'll give you an example. None of this stuff incorporates thought. It doesn't incorporate thinking. I had this conversation with a vegan at one point, and we were talking about this topic of love also. And I said, well, I feel like we transmute energy with love, but it happens when we're not thinking about it. Like my mom let's say, for example, she bought meat from the butcher, and this animal went through the most horrendous life ever. It got abused, tortured, slaughtered in the slaughterhouse. But my mom bought this meat, and she went home, and because she loves me so much, she cooked it with so much love, because she wanted to give me the best hospitality, and she wants me to be nourished, and she gives me the most harmonious chemistry into this meal. This meal, she transmuted it without thinking, right? And then when I take it, I intake that beautiful chemistry back in return. Suppose if somebody's giving you or preparing something with a certain negative energy, you sort of intake that. That's why sometimes when I go out to eat, and I see people look pissed off and whatnot, sometimes I even think twice about eating in that place, But on an energetic level, we can do this without thinking. But that good, because I think humanity is predominantly good, but that good has to exist within you first. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to know that good is in you. A lot of people are good, even though they're perceived to be bad. It's just, they're in their animalistic nature. And sometimes they even act out certain animalistic things. And that's why in society that's not conducive. Then they get locked up, and think about it. They get thrown in jail or locked up just like an animal is. You know, they get told when to eat, when to be walked, and they're basically not even there. Your identity gets taken away. You're just a number. It's kind of like an animal. Same thing in a cage, same thing in a slaughterhouse. You get told when to go in, when to go out, or like a child, you get taken away your adulthood or your humanity because you were not conducive to society. But think about it, that whole system is designed in the way that your ego operates your body. Because every time that you try to bypass the ego, you don't notice that that's the one that wants to be in control of things. But sometimes we're not conducive in a way. And that's why sometimes our ego intends to take over. And when we're not aware, we end up acting these things out and not being conducive to society, you know?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, no, I agree with that. And but there are examples where people have used that propaganda to influence people into believing certain things, and we can go back, hundreds of years if you want. And but right now we have a country, and we got to watch our words here for YouTube. So please make sure you don't say bad stuff. If you think it's bad, just bleep it out, mumble it through something. But anyhow, there's a country over there who's destroying another country that starts with a G and an A and some Z's. Anyway, and that country has said, oh, don't worry, those people they're not even people. It's okay if we get rid of them because they're not people. And that propaganda has gone through the first, second, third, fourth, and also the light comes on and says, yep, I guess they're not people. It's okay to get rid of them. Same with World War II. We got one group of people saying another group of people, well, they're not real people, so it's okay to get rid of those people. And people were doing it. I mean, in all reality, they should have said, hey, they're really people, and I can't just do that. That's wrong. And if all those people had just stood up and said, yeah, that's wrong, none of this would ever happen. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm not taking a few, but it's the propaganda. The whole group joined in and said, okay, it's like stoning back in the day. You read about it in the Bible and everything. The first guy throws the first stone, and everybody says, well, it's okay that he did it, so I'm going to do it too. Next thing you know, the guy is in the middle of the pit there. He's dead, and you're all throwing little stones at him. But it's okay because it's the propaganda. The first guy did it, and we condone that kind of practice.
Yeah.
So
I mean, everything's being turned into a propaganda now. I mean, even like it's all meant to divide, and I feel like people get led into that division when they don't understand themselves, or don't even understand the chemistry of life to begin with. Like when we talk about it's a mathematical universe. It is what it is. That's how I look at it. I mean, you got guys like, for example, like Terrence Howard, that comes out, for example, now and has a lot of interesting theories about, let's say, for example, 1 + 1. He'll say 1 × 1 = 2 instead of 1. Trying to reinvent that wheel. Life is already designed and created a certain way. But you had a very interesting show the other day that I really liked, and it was with Nina the Mystic and somebody else, but you guys were talking about feminism and women in power, and this is the propaganda that we're talking about. Because see, here's the thing, it never needs to come to a point, and this is where I want to integrate these things where we're talking about the love that holds everything together. But what are we basically talking about whenever they try to separate the aspect of man and woman? You get what I'm saying? When I look at a woman, she's a kind of man. You get what I'm saying? When you look at even the word that we use, everybody is a person when they're an individual. And when you look at the word person, it's the same word we see a son or a child of Christ. You get what I'm saying? But Christ is not a man. Christ is the body. The only thing is, one is an expression of feminine energy. The other one's an expression of masculine energy. Now, here's the thing. When we start to talk about that women in power, and they want to equate this to why, because women can do what men can do. Women cannot do what men can do because they're designed differently, or at least physically, they're not as strong as a man. But it has nothing to do with that, because I go back to like even the way, how were the Egyptian pyramids built? How were these crazy ass looking buildings that you can't even replicate the technology were built? You get what I'm saying? So I don't care how many times they say man did this, man did that, but who and how were those things built at one point? Did they use the same machineries that we were using today? Because why is it that the technology that we have today can't be replicated to build those pyramids? You know what I'm saying? And the reason why is because we weren't using brute force the way that they say men have dominion over women to some extent, because they're using brute force over the things that they built. But in actuality, the woman, okay, there's a reason why they were burnt at the stake once upon a time, considered witches and whatnot, because they were able to manipulate energy a certain way in the form of what we call magic, because they had the emotional side more dominant over men. So men, for example, would actually say, like they say, women complement the men. But I feel like the way the pyramids were built, and I made, this was my very first YouTube video. I always said our body is the secret to this whole entire life, because you hold a certain amount of estrogen and I'm predominantly a man. So we both hold more testosterone, but we still have estrogen in us. The same way women, they have estrogen, but they have a certain amount of testosterone in them too. When you're able to utilize this chemistry, I feel like we were able to use sound frequencies and, you know, let's say, for example, just the harmonious chemistry of our body to actually design these beautiful structures. But now we separated from Christ, which is the body, God, to actually depend on machineries to do the things for us. It's no different than what we're doing now. We built AI and we depend more on AI than our own common senses to actually come up with things. Whenever you want to figure something out, oh, I got to Google it. Oh, I got to look through the Google goggles of the internet. And then I got to type on motherboard, when actually in time, once upon a time, we connected to Mother Earth by standing on the soil barefoot and actually using these eyes to see the world and actually connect to the internet that way. That's called the life force frequency of negativity and positivity that's in the air. But now we use Wi-Fi. Do you see how all those things are like, we look at the inverted way of how we live now versus how we used to live? This is why right now we're living evil, which is inverted, right? And evil is feminine energy. That's why I've mentioned in my videos that technology is feminine energy. The same way I made a video also that says that the woman is a technology created by man, only because they use that allegory in the Bible of the woman came out the rib of Adam, right? So what did man do? Man was created in the image of God, but we're looking at that backwards because we're looking at it as a man. But in actuality, they designed the man in the image of your human body, which is a man. And then when you look at computers were designed in the image of man. So man basically got further away from being a God man to basically becoming more human-like. And because we forgot who we were, we started to design computers and technology. And even at one point, I feel like we didn't even need cars and airplanes to go anywhere in the world. We used our body and our mind basically projecting ourselves. That's what we call astral projection or out of body experiences, to experience different realms. Because how is it that back in the day we didn't have boats, airplanes, or none of that stuff, but yet every pyramid was built some way, shape, or form along the ley lines of the planet? Everything was just so structured a certain way. That's why I look at history and I'm like, why are we being told about history? History could be rewritten, because again, you fall into a propaganda, so you bind into that reality. And this is what separates you from what you actually really are. You are the technology. Why do you think Area 51 is so secret? They say they hold little green men there, right? It's just all little code words for green men is your heart space. And they take and grab that frequency of your heart, tie it into a little Area 51, what they call there. And then that's what the whole technology is, your human body. The flying saucers, everything is your human body. Your body is the flying saucer. You know what I'm saying? And I've actually been in points where I've been in a very still space and I come out of body, but I was pulled by my feet. And then all of a sudden I'm actually, you know, turning like a wheel. And then all of a sudden I got propelled up. Right. But you know what's crazy? I didn't feel like I had any G-force. It was like a magnetic pull and I was just going up the same way they say that spaceships, they could defy the laws of gravity and just fly in patterns like this where, you know, they would actually not have to fly straight or be propelled up. No, it was happening as if it was a spaceship. You get what I'm saying? And I felt like we had this technology. We just forgot. You know what I'm saying? And we use common sense and sit down and really just like look at what we are actually doing and tie it back and reverse engineer it. We'll see that we were actually able to do this at one point without having to rely on anything outside of us. I'm trying to look at it from a space of everything we're doing now as far as how we make food in the supermarkets, but yet we garden, how we rely on even energy. Who charges your batteries? How do you get energy? You don't waste energy. You channel energy. You release energy. You get what I'm saying? It's like weird because people look at it as like, oh, I lost energy. You spend energy because you're putting it in a way like the human body would spend energy. It's like a car. If I have this car, I'm in my car right now. Suppose that I have the engine running, okay? And then my headlights are on, everything's going. The car won't die. But suppose that I shut the engine off and I leave the headlights on, the car battery will die, right? So it's like that with the body. Since we're not operating our motor of the heart space and all our organs, but we're just operating through the eyes, we're like a car with the headlights on and no motor running. So we always feel tired at the end of the day. You get what I'm saying? Like mental energy's drained, sexual energy's drained. You know what I'm saying? You can't really pull out the energy from the chi because everything's just not being used. It's not that everybody doesn't have it. It's just not being used. You know, and there's points where when you sit, you'll notice, you'll feel these things just light up, you know? I'm sorry I rambled on for a long time, but go ahead. I'll let you get in there, bro.
Well, you brought up some good comments there about back in the day, and I've had some thoughts and theories that could go way back. And it's like, how come we don't have written word for, thousands of years back? And when we do have words written, some of the first languages were basically hieroglyphs, like pictures, right? Why would they draw pictures as a language? Because we didn't speak. It was telepathy. You didn't need to speak. Why would you need to write something down? How could you write down that language? The only way to do it would be to draw a picture. And then
excellent point, because even when you're talking, you don't notice the words you use. Sometimes you get a mental picture in mind. Whenever you hear a word, it'll draw a mental picture in your mind. It's the same thing, but now the language binds you to a reality because they control the pictures that go in your mind through the language.
Yeah, and but that's the whole thing is, as long as you don't have that language, then you can't write any words down. When the Europeans got here, the Native Americans didn't have a written language. They didn't need it. A lot of it was they could. The guy from the East Coast and the guy from the West Coast could meet in the middle, and they could talk with sign language, and their sign language was pretty much exactly the same on both sides all the way across. Why is that? When neither one spoke different languages. I mean, East and West Coast spoke totally different languages. Also, the story of the Tower of Babel. Now, if you really start thinking about that, everybody spoke the same language. If you're all mentally telepathy, it wouldn't matter. You're connected to everybody. You wouldn't have to have a language. And the moment you all started speaking, nobody would understand each other. Oh, you shut that part of me off. You're done.
And that's the thing. So now there was no misunderstandings, right? So there was no illusion of that separation between you and the other. And that's the whole thing, because when we started to use the words, we got disconnected from each other. It's kind of like this. I look at it like this, and this is basically the biggest nugget here. When you look in nature and you see these trees and they're all growing together, the only reason they all thrive is because there's a mycelium network underneath. It's a network of communication that all these trees have, where if one tree is sick, another tree can send nutrients to that tree because it's in need, right? So everything works in harmony in nature. But then when you look at you planting things in your garden, it's not the same as nature. So it would look like, oh, this plant would rob nutrients from this plant if you plant it too close together, but only because it wasn't set up the way in nature is set up, where that mycelium network is in there. Notice how when mycelium network, by the way, is the fungal root system of mushrooms. And when you look at how when people take certain psychoactive mushrooms, you see how informative that is to you, and also how you can actually see the connectiveness between you and everything outside of you, right? So that's the reason why, if we were able to actually look at it the same way and built everything exactly the same way, but the language actually ended up separating it. Look at it, for example, I look at it like this. I say Adam was the first man, right? Adam, you look at the word Adam's apple, everything was created with the word, right? But everything was sound. It wasn't the word that we used in language, you know? And when we look at it, we say it was from a metaphysical space, but it created in physicality through a sound. And that's how man came into existence. But everything, as far as how we look at it, we got to look at it from physical, metaphysical, mesh it together and see that it's all chemistry. It's just one thing works with the other. It's got to be harmony, and that's how everything grows. Because you start separating things, and it's the same thing. Everything just keeps getting separated. You form propagandas, you form movements and groups, and everything just gets separated. And we're fighting against each other, when in actuality, if we were all connected, you would see through the illusion of separation, which is basically nothing but Maya.
Yeah, you couldn't, at that point, you couldn't lie to somebody if, they could see the truth in you.
Right.
And here's a good one, and I think Sunset Dreamer has it tagged. And this kind of, I can back this up in a way, is that he says, animals don't have a written language, but they still communicate. That's right. They barely, how does a one coyote talk to another coyote, or one chicken talk to another chicken? A few clucks, or something, and they all know what's going on, and they can recognize people or different chickens. We have science to prove that. But then if you really go back in time, there are stories that said that the man could talk with the animals, and the animals would talk with man. And why is that? Because it was all mental telepathy. If we're talking to ourselves mentally, why wouldn't we talk to the animals mentally?
Right. What's crazy? I said the animals are part of feminine energy. It's feminine nature, And when you look at animals, right, when we are in our lower animalistic nature, right, and it's not balanced, it tends to be a negative energy. Right. And the reason I even mentioned this in my videos is because of this. When I look at the cats in my garden, you see, they have a very powerful sex drive, right? But you can see a very big difference between when they're fixed to when they're not fixed. Right now, they're all fixed, and it's actually a delight to have them out there. But when they're not fixed, they're fighting, they are tearing each other apart, they're multiplying, like crazy. But think about it, though. They don't have all they're programmed to do is reproduce. But then people have this same exact instinct. And that's why they say that God said that man has dominion over the rest of the animal kingdom. But in actuality, that's basically your root chakra. If you control your sexual urges and natures and channel that up, right, to the upper heavens, let it pass the gateway of the heart, right, and get to the upper realms, and then you ground that energy back, that's basically God, right, ascending into heaven. 33rd vertebra, he dies. Right, that we call that the sacred oil. It actually travels around the head, right? The cerebrum passes it right back down into the lower animalistic nature. But that's grounded energy. Man doesn't have to castrate himself. Man doesn't have to go get neutered, right? Because that's where all your power is. Your sexual energy is there. It's very important. So man needs that sexual energy. But if he doesn't have it under control, right, then it's not like a man gets neutered, but they get locked up because they actually weren't conducive to society. A lot of cats aren't conducive to society, so they have to, they're more conducive when they get castrated, when they get their testicles cut off. The same way now, when we look at the feminine energy, it's not to say that a woman is anything underneath a man. It's just a guiding force. When we look at the blueprints of life, you look at the sun has order over the chaotic natures of the feminine planet. In fact, we're in a dark planet right now. The only reason there's light is because of the sun, right? But even further back, if you look at why the sun is even there, is because of you collapsing the sun into existence. You know what I'm saying? So you're looking at everything outside of you. It's a mirror of what's happening within you. So when I look at the sun, I'm looking at a mirror of myself. I'm lighting the reality up with my perception, and I'm realizing that I'm actually projecting it from the heart space. But when you're disconnected from there and you just live up here, you're just in the masculine energy, but you're not connected to the feminine natures, which is what you need to actually see the reality for what it is. But you see it for how you are, not really for how it is and how they designed it to say that that's how it is outside of you. You're looking at reality for how you are. When you see the corruption and all that, you realize the corruption in you first. Then you know why the corruption is there to begin with. It's all integration.
Yeah, it is. And most people can't see themselves in doing anything wrong. Most people, think, hey, I'm perfect. I have my flaws, but, I'm a good person, blah, blah, blah. Girls always think they're a 10, guys always think they're a 10. And yet, really, be real. You can't look in the mirror and look at, you have to look in the mirror and say, well, no, I'm just an average person. There's not many people that are above average in all reality. We all could be to some extent, but we all think about it in our head, and that's where it comes in. It starts there, and then after that, it spirals into, it's always them doing bad to me, not me doing bad to anybody else. I never do anything bad. People always screw me over. You've heard that saying, oh, everybody screws me over all the time. I got to work twice as hard to get ahead because I'm always getting screwed over. Nobody gives it. I never get, it's me, 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 me. But in all reality, maybe it is you. And maybe you have to change. Maybe you're not putting out, feeling the universe. You don't have the energy. You're only doing what's up here and not feeling it within here as much, or vice versa, one or the other.
It's just owning it. I mean, think about it. How much, and that's the ego basically keeping you from doing that. Because think about this. Suppose it that you can walk away from a situation, right? But you feel like if you walk away, then you may feel like you look like a pussy, right? But the whole thing is, do you see how much power it takes to actually walk away and say, I'm the bigger person because I walked away, and you just put the ego to the side? And I'm not saying like, do the whole, because that's where the little trick with the whole story of Jesus Christ, where they say, turn the other cheek. I'm not about that shit, because if I get slapped, you're going to get the other side slapped as well. It's not even about that. It's literally, you stand up for yourself, but you also don't engage in things that that you could actually find an alternative route that's better for you and that person outside of you. Because think about this. Suppose that you're in a situation, or even in a relationship, let's say, and the girl pisses you off to the point where you go and beat the shit out of her. I mean, what good is it you sitting in jail where afterwards you're going to be like, damn, why'd I do that? Because now I'm sitting here in a jail cell, and that's just because you couldn't control yourself. You know what I'm saying? You just couldn't manage yourself. But in actuality, that's from the house. That's your immediate mirror. Everything outside in life, when you really sit back and reflect, there's been times where I've had a little bit of anger in me, and it's like magic. I always see it outside of me somehow manifest. It doesn't manifest directly, but it'll manifest as far as inflammatory situations happening. But when I'm feeling good, even the opposite could happen, and then you'll look at it as, oh, the universe is testing you, right? In an instant where I say, oh, suppose that I say I'm a millionaire. And then all of a sudden my tire breaks down in my car. And then all of a sudden now I see that my bill, and I take it to the mechanic shop, is like $500, right? And then all of a sudden I start complaining about it, right? What is that though? It's not, it may look like a negative situation, but in actuality, all it was you may have been presented with millionaire problems. Suppose that you were actually a millionaire, right? And you got presented with that scenario. Would you still address it like the way you did before you said you were a millionaire, or are you going to address it differently, like if you were actually a millionaire? And then, because this also happened to me, which is crazy, where an instant where I was already like saying, man, I got it. Oh, I fucking got it. And this bad scenario happened, but because I handled it like I owned it, that I said I am a millionaire, I got presented with a check from somewhere, you know what I'm saying, that I wasn't even expecting. And it paid more than what I was expecting, even for the damages of whatever it is that happened, only because I feel like I already owned it in a way where I already declared I am a millionaire. These are just examples. It's not to say that these are actually things that actually happen. It's just examples. But you notice how it's not even that it's a bad or a good thing. It's just perceptions and what you actually believe about yourself first. So if I believe something about myself and I declared it, I may actually get presented, because it's like this. You put an order in a restaurant. All you have to do is sit back and wait, and you just expect it to be given to you the way you asked for it, right? And if it's not, then you have the right to turn it back and tell them this is not what I ordered, and they have to bring you the right order. It's like that with the universe. You know what I'm saying? Like, you put out a frequency, you emit a frequency, and you get back something in return. But you may not like what you get, and if you don't like it, then you just have to change your tone or change the way you thought about it originally, because it may be just it wasn't clear. That's why they say you have to be very clear in what you want or what you put out. So sometimes it takes a real deep authenticity to actually be able to know that when you get something back, you never get back what you want. You get back what you deserve. What you deserve is basically just what you put out. I like what you say, be the frequency you want to receive, right? That's why I asked you that one time, what is the frequency you would want to receive? You know what I'm saying? So that's your famous saying.
Yes, it is. Well, but you're totally right that the words, are twisted in your meaning. It's like you've watched, I don't know how many dozens of shows where there's a genie or some guy opens a bottle or he gets 3 wishes or whatever. And the genie guy comes out and he says, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? The guy goes, well, he says, is this true? I want a new jacket. And the genie gives him a new jacket. He's like, wow, that's pretty good. And the last wish is always something crazy like, well, I want $1 million. And then, of course, the guy gives him $1 million, but they're like Zimbabwe bucks. He's like,
Yeah.
I didn't ask for Zimbabwe bucks. I wanted dollar bucks.
That's true.
But oh no, my world. It sucks, because he didn't word it right. He didn't, it all blew up in his face when he thought, I got it. I got this. I really do. I got this. Look at, I asked for a coat and I got a coat. I asked for a new car. Well, the car came and it was new to me. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's where he starts screwing up, is because he got a car. Some guy shows up and hands him the keys and says, here, you want this thing? You can have it. And he goes, wow, I got a new car.
Yeah.
But it wasn't new. Then when he asked for the $1 million and the genie says, well, that's your last wish. He's like, oh no. And that's the same thing. Your manifestation sometimes runs low. Your first manifesting it comes from the heart. I want a new coat. The second one, I want a new car. Meaning you just want a different car or a better one than you had. And that came along. But then when you asked for the $1 million, you really didn't have it in your heart that you wanted $1 million, because you just couldn't imagine it in your head. So you couldn't receive it. You see what I'm saying?
I love the saying that Jim Rome says. He goes, if somebody hands you $1 million, best you become a millionaire or you don't get to keep the money. That's so true, though. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you have to become that first for you to be able to, because that's energy, bro. How are you going to handle that kind of currency or energy if your mindset is weak? You get what I'm saying? It's just like I said before, you get presented with millionaire problems, right? You may get presented with a bill just to see how you would handle it. But all that comes down to how you're grounding that, foundation, that chemistry. And that's electric magnetism, right? That's negative and positive. That's why I like the topic today. The glue that holds everything together is just all integration, man.
Well, yeah, in the integration, really, in all respects, we should be a totally different society because we're all human. I'm just like you going through this experience. We're not different. We're human. I shouldn't hate you. I shouldn't dislike you because, you're a different race or a different color or a different belief or a different anything. You're human. You have 2 legs, 4 arms, or 2 arms, 4 legs, 2 legs. Hang on. 2 arms, 2 legs, 5.
My man, you're a different species there.
I'm a tongue twister there. But, my brain was going a little faster than my mouth was. But anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We have 4 appendages. That's what I should be saying. Anyway, that was what I was thinking. But I'm saying is we're all the same. We're not different, but yet there's people out there that single people out and say, yeah, he's not one of us. I mean, I'm sure you've been in that situation. I remember when I was in school, the kids would be in these little cliques and, no, you're not one of us, guys. Get out, stay away from us. We don't want to have nothing to do with you. But when you find that little clique, then your little group, you're kind of tight knit and close together and blah, 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 blah. But, get along with those other guys over there. And it's same way today. When can we drop all that? That's you were brilliant with this, the mind telepathy and all that stuff and the different speaking, because of the fact that that would, take the veil down for everybody. We would definitely become equals then at that point. You could understand and feel what, any other human being was thinking and feeling. Maybe it'd be a little overwhelming for people right away, but I think it would level the playing field. That's why I think dogs and cats get along, and ducks get along with ducks, and chickens get along with chickens. Yeah, they have their squabbles, but they band together. They don't get there and look at each other and go, "Well, you're not part of my clique. You need to be
Yeah.
destroyed."
The way I see it, I mean, it's what like the Bible says, you're in the world, but not of it. And the way I see it is, even the words we use, like we're saying we're human, but we're actually like playing this human role. That's why we're called human beings. It's good to be right as
Mhm.
you are, but not get messed or entangled in all this shit. Like there's so much stuff happening outside of you, and how do you overcome that? You know what I'm saying? But they're all human things happening. It's not like these are godly things happening. These are all human things, but everything starts from the metaphysical world. That's why they say also in the Bible that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but it's a spiritual battle. But if you look at it, it's nothing but a blueprint to form the humanity that you think you are. And that's why people have a hard time overcoming it, because they associating with it so much. It's just like every movement. They require your participation. But the more you take part in it, the more you're ingrained in it. And people get so ingrained in their humanity that they become so egotistical, they associate with it. And it's hard to overcome these things that we look at outside of us that is, considered corruption, considered this, considered that. When you overcome humanity, I even feel like you break a lot of the, like let's say karmic DNA, negatives that you may have along your lineage, because you're living in this world, but you're also enduring the sins of the world. And the reason I say this is because there's certain times you may have certain tendencies to be a certain way, and that may just be passed down by ancestral lines. And the only way that you can break that is becoming aware of it and feeling it through and actually healing those wounds. Because a lot of the times, everything we're experiencing outside of ourselves is basically a mirror of already what's happening within you, but you overcome it to the point where when you overcome humanity, I even feel you can actually skip reincarnation for that purpose. Because think about this though, you always are basically at the frequency and vibratory state you are. Right now, we're a vibrational being, right? We're vibing to a certain state. That's why you even attracted yourself into my life, or I attracted myself into your life, right? So they say your vibe attracts your tribe. But at the end of the day, even what you're ingrained in, which is humanity, should be overcome to some extent, because it's a death process. Like when you die, that death is about detachment. You don't, if you're very attached to the physical realm, how do you know that that's not what keeps you in the same loop? Look at what happens when you watch a movie and you're not aware you're experiencing that movie. You go to sleep and you dream that you're experiencing that scary movie. What does that mean? That means that you basically, because of that immediate experience, what is a sleep? Sleep is a mini death, because you produce a little bit of DMT, and when you die, it floods in your brain, right? So that's the reason why I feel like when we live our life, we have to live it as us actually believing that we're God, not just your ego saying I'm God, and it's not blasphemy, and it's not, something where you're having like this grandiose about yourself. When I say God is, you have authority of your life. You have awareness that you're creating your life and not pointing fingers outside of yourself. God's not blaming the finger. Oh, I created these humans. No, I mean, you are God. You create your reality. I created you. I collapsed you into existence. I said we created the sun. That's why the earth is lit up. If you have this ingrained within you, like this is just how you can actually, this is what true woke is. Like people say, what is woke? What is being conscious? Like I feel like people are walking dead. Like they're just zombies. You get what I'm saying? Like there's
Yeah.
conversations I've had with certain people, and I'm like, man, bro, like it's like they're there for a purpose for me. But sometimes I'm like, I can't even talk to certain people because I don't have time for that small talk, that small bullshit. Like I can't. I have to have meaningful conversations sometimes. And I feel like I'm wasting my time. Or like when I told you the example of the headlights, that just, you're just draining energy. I feel like I have to force myself. That's why authenticity is important, but you don't have to be an asshole about it. But even in the gym, I remember there's certain people who just want to fucking yap in your ear. And I'm like, God damn, bro, like I'm working out. Like And that sometimes I even have body language. I got my headphones on, I'm like, yo, dude, I gotta finish my workout. And I'll connect it because they just want to talk about nonsense, bro. Like nonsense. And I feel like those are just the matrix, the people, the agents that just want to fucking like distract you and keep you from like, doing what you're supposed to do. And this is on a light level. But then there's certain projects or things that you may have lined up to want to do, but you'll always find certain distractions. And how weak-minded you are would be to entertain it because you don't want to be rude, or you feel like you have to be nice or some shit. Sometimes it's good to just be like, yo, can you shut the fuck up? And I'm doing something, and just keep it moving,
Well, and that's so true. The propaganda, the things that lead us off. It's not only that guy that shows up, from the Matrix, and you go, I don't know who this guy is, but he's just yakking my ear off for nothing at all. I mean, we see it in signs from around the world. Looking back in the day, look, we can do it. That recent one, we're all in this together. Remember that during the few years back here during the plague, but anyway, these things show up. Look at here, we're still doing this. Corn, the food of the nation, served some way every meal, appetizing, nutritious, and economical. And today, what do? We eat every product we have literally has some corn in it somehow, some way, shape, or form, and we think it's the greatest thing under the sun. But should you be eating every meal as corn? No, corn is just a filler. Literally, it doesn't have that much nutrition. It's not that great for you.
It's
you don't want to put
genetically modified too.
Yeah.
One of the most processed foods in the planet, and that's what they feed the animals in the slaughterhouse. You know what I'm saying? And you ingest that. So some people would think like, why they're B12 deficient? They say that you're supposed to get B12 from the animal meat, but you don't get the B12 because they're not. A lot of these places, they're not. The animals aren't eating the grass. They're not. They're eating corn, and that's just to get them fat, to get the meat to taste better. And a lot of the times they're pumped with so much steroids and hormones that whatever you think you're getting, you're not getting anything. It's actually an endocrine disruptor, if anything.
Well, yeah, but see, this stuff is, people read this, they get it in their brain.
Oh, yeah.
This is the stuff that binds us together. Hey, we all eat corn, and we can do it. And, no matter who you are, we can do it. We can eat corn, What does that make us? It makes us the fish in the school of the sea, and they're all together all the time. That's us, but they're all individuals. But soon as that swimmer guy comes along, they scatter, they break apart, they, go in their smaller groups, and then eventually they all come back together. That's how we live. We break apart, we come together, we break apart, but we're all these individuals swimming in this big pool. I mean, I guess that's some way to do it. That we're all bound together, by some sort of mind glue, but yet the moment there's a peril, we all split into fractional pieces. I don't know why that is, but we do. And it's very provable. Yeah. I think we talked about that many times. As soon as I have a different belief than you, you're out, new guy's in. Yeah. And we're not bound together anymore, but which we should be. We should be thinking on the same frequency. I'm human, you're human. You may, and the understanding of, feminine energy and masculinity. It doesn't matter. You have a different perception, a different idea, and I should be more accepting to it, but not, adversely defying it. And that's what happens a lot of times is, say you have an idea and I say, nope, we're done. I don't ever want to talk to you again. That shouldn't be like that. It's like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll sit and think on it, but I'm really not into that, or hey, but we see that throughout the world, especially coming in this coming election. People are like, no, I don't like that. Oh, I love this. I can't handle that. I can't even look at that person, it divides families. It divides the nation. It's a scuttlebutt all over the place. Wait a minute, people. We shouldn't worry about that. We're all one group here. We're all Americans. It doesn't matter. We should be united regardless who idiot stick is going to be in charge of everything, right? Am I wrong? We're us, just because
When you
there's one
look
guy.
at when you look at the whole political party, let's say like like it was Biden, then you had Kamala Harris and whatnot, and then going up against Trump. All you're seeing there is uh the liberals and conservatives. It's just more or less like what you're looking at, even with color, the red team, the blue team, masculine energy, feminine energy. It's more or less like the concept of good and evil, but at the end of the day, it's that's real true propaganda, and they need your participation. This is why they've developed so much uh drama around it, because drama is negative energy and drama is attractive. Negative energy is attractive. Negative energy unbalanced is also feminine energy. But you have a balanced feminine energy, which is you have a divine feminine energy, and then you have toxic feminine energy. The same way you have divine masculinity and toxic masculinity. But I feel like this whole thing is completely backwards. Even those pictures you showed about, the female saying we can do it and whatnot. We're in a patriarchal system, and only because religion took everything literal and made the man be dominion over the woman, but in a way that it wasn't designed. The system is designed where they're using brute force, the same way they enforce rights on people is all through enforcement, through force. Because we actually, if you really think about it, we have no rights. Rights are actually affirmed in the negative. So when you look at it overall on the spectrum of things, the feminine energy is suppressed, but it's suppressed because that's just the power that people don't realize and they don't know. It's all within you. The same way we were talking about the inner child. You know what I'm saying? The inner child, a child is basically still feminine energy until that child becomes an individual, and then that's where you start to experience or realize or even perceive more of a masculine energy. It's not man, it's not woman, it's energy. But people associate this with genders, and this is the problem. If I got a prong and I'm connecting an outlet on the wall, there's a negative prong and a positive prong, and then there's the neutral one, and when I plug it, I'm getting power to my appliance, right? I'm not saying a man and a woman's going in the wall, but I need both of those prongs to be able to get power. You get what I'm saying? And people are in there in the positive, which is positive is toxic, because they think positive is niceness, is politeness. That's not nice. That's toxic masculinity. Right? Masculinity is that awareness, is consciousness. You're aware that you're in a fucking corruption, and when you're aware, then you could do something about what the negative is experiencing, and that's how you guide that negative into integration to get power into the appliance, and then you're able to have an impactful message to the world. And then this is how we all work together. But the thing that separates us is language and toxic negative thoughts. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like it's a lack of communication. Again, the mycelium network. Life force energy is not just positive. It's good, but it's also negative. The only way to get power is integration of those two things. The feminine energy, for example, you'll see a woman is the expression, is the manifestation of that negative energy. That's why women are attractive, right? But women can be very chaotic, very catty, very negative, right? In a way where it's toxic. But then man, when God said we created the heavens and the earth, everything, and it was good. Good is the word for God, but good is man. That's masculine. Manifest is the same thing. You're manifesting something into this realm, but it's coming out of darkness, right? Out of darkness comes light. Darkness is the feminine energy. I don't know how fucking people don't get the whole, they separate these things, and you need them together anyway.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. You need the yin and the yang. Otherwise, nothing's going to work.
Yin and the yang.
Yeah, if you don't have the yin and the yang, it's like you can't prove to me one place you can do good and no bad, or bad and no good. Something always comes about either way. I don't care who or how you figure it. It's always one or the other. You cannot do good without bad. And you cannot do bad without doing something that is good.
Yeah. And I encourage people who are into this topic, and I guarantee people are going to come back to this topic, because I feel like this is the stuff that's actually separating people, is the whole separation of genderism and it's not taking it literal. People take the Bible literal. When you look at, for example, energy, you could see a man expressing himself a little bit more feminine. It doesn't necessarily mean he's gay. You know what I'm saying? But when you look at it, it just means that that's what the color spectrum is. There's certain people who have a certain expression of it. But then there's men who are very, very manly and they end up being, cum si, cum sa. And then I'm like, damn, bro, this guy's the furthest I would expect that to be. But it's within that individual. You get what I'm saying? But it's a disorder. It's an imbalance of chemistry within them. You get what I'm saying? Nothing wrong with it though. There's not that it's bad or good. The only reason religion says that it's bad is because it's an abomination and people are basically batteries. And if everything's ran by the church, you can actually be somebody that produces or somebody that could be consumed from. And believe it or not, that's why your body's made of cells. You produce 1.3 volts of electricity, I believe it is, or 1.3 amps. I forgot what it was. But think about this, though. If your body, right, if your body's made of trillions of cells, right? Think about this, though. Are you able to harness that energy and use it for something, or are you being consumed to some extent through the stuff that you do? It could be watching pornography. It could be, entertaining yourself or participating in certain things that you become very emotional about. All that energy is being funneled the same way when people watch two sports teams. All the energy goes toward that team, but then you pay with interest because you're paying with money, and all that is it. Who's winning? The people who are the promoters, the owners of the organization is that wins. And if you look at it, organs, your body is an organization. You have organs in your body, and they're organized a certain way, a certain frequency. You play to a certain tune. You could be a harmonious, vibrant individual, or you could be somebody who just walks in a room and you seem distorted. And that's just imbalance. That's all it is. Not bad or good. You're just not balanced. And it's unawareness, because when you're aware, you could balance yourself out. You balance your chakras, you balance your energies, you balance your mindsets. That's all masculine and feminine energy.
Yep. That one book I read, I can't remember the guy, but he said the same thing. He says these guys who practice, all those magic arts and stuff like that, sometimes they become too much of, one or too much of the other. But they, and the only good ones are the ones that end up with the balance. If they didn't have the balance, then they're, and that's what it all boils down to. So,
what's funny? I made a very, very good video on black magic. And here's the thing, though. The thing is that you notice how the people who are not very balanced have bad experiences or negative experiences through that black magic. It's really showing you what you are. That's all it is. And people don't know this, and they end up becoming very scared because they're associating with it. You get what I'm saying? They're not aware that this is within them. And the moment you sit with it, rather than running away from it like you've been doing your whole life, you sit with it, you integrate it, and you use this. This is what you use to your advantage. It's a chemistry you use. Black magic is feminine energy. White magic is masculine energy. You know how many people are doing positive love and light, but they're not, they're mad. Their negative natures are not grounded. So in other words, you're just a light basically that's being guided like a sheep. So it's all, like I said about rights being affirmed in the negative, where you think you have rights, so you walk around thinking you're the man. Well, you're not, because there's people who are walking around with this love and light shit. They think they're in charge. Do you think you're in charge? But they're actually affirmed in the negative, because their negative natures are controlled by the people who are in power. Why are these people considered Satanists and diabolic and whatnot? We say that's bad, but in actuality, they're playing with the black magic side of things, and they got control over the people because they don't know about the negative natures that you have, that you can use to your advantage to empower yourself through awareness. But you have to have awareness. That's the woke, that's the consciousness, that's the masculine side. It's you have to have both things working with each other.
Yes. And see, that's another thing. If when these people do magic, they think, okay, I am gonna do blah blah blah, and I'm gonna get this is my goal, right? I did notice, I've been dabbling in all this stuff a little bit here and there and trying to read a lot about it. But if I want this done, right, I need to balance it out with something else.
Right.
Because if I don't, say I'm going to, and that's what happens with a lot of these people and that want to do black magic, and they want to curse somebody. Right? We'll just say that. I'm going to curse somebody.
Well, that cursing thing, man, I think that's just again, man, you're cursing. You're gonna end up hurting yourself in the long run. You
That's
know what I'm
right.
saying?
Why is that? Why is that? Because you're cursing them and you're not doing any balance. And so it comes back on you for the balance.
That's right. Well,
That's what the problem is. These people are, I'm gonna curse, I'm gonna throw up the mojo and I'm gonna dance around. I'm gonna woo, I'm cursing that guy, I'm gonna do the thing and whatever. It might be even just words spoken. Doesn't matter. What did you do to balance it out? Nothing. And so it's gonna ricochet off on them and it's gonna look for balance and it's gonna come back at you. Hence, you're the one that's getting cursed. You're gonna have downfalls, and that guy's gonna be protected because you did it wrong.
it's still, I mean, well, the person got emotional through a human act. If they're cursing somebody, it's because they're emotional and they're associating with it's all a human act, right? Think about this though. If I was, let's say I had some type of negative energy thrown at me. You ever hear that you're protected with the armor of God? If you have positive energy, right? It neutralizes negative energy. That's the love that I'm talking about. But if you look at it from the perspective of a human, then you're looking at it from good and bad. You neutralize chemistry. If you have a disease, your body's always going to try to heal you. You try to get in the way by taking medications. It's no different than you trying to stop something that is imbalanced in the body in an unnatural state. But nature always balances itself out, right? So if you have a disease, if you know how to let the body rock and run on its own, the body, the armor, the Christ body, this is Christ, then you start to actually heal on its own. That's why when you get a fever, mucus, vomiting, diarrhea, you let it run its course. All you have to do is hydrate yourself, and that's it. When you hydrate yourself, things will start moving and you get the fluid moving back out. When you do inflammatory things like cursing or it's inflammatory stagnation, it's staggering to you. It's coming from an unbalanced state within yourself first to begin with. If I'm criticizing somebody, you better believe I'm actually pointing the finger at a mirror aspect of myself. I'm actually criticizing myself when I do that. But if I'm doing that outside of myself, it's like somebody being rich. Let me give you an example to make it into perspective. Suppose that somebody's rich. Instead of me genuinely feeling happy for that individual, I'm actually like jealous and envious. And I'm like, I deserve to be in that position. How is that person? And then what do you think I'm doing? With my mindset, I'm actually cursing that individual and I'm cursing myself instead, because I'm actually giving a signal out to the universe that I don't consent to abundance in my world. I consent to poverty because I'm mad at that person being in poverty. When in actuality, the reason I'm in poverty is because my mentality is in poverty, right? And the abundance is showing me and it's triggering me because it's something that I can do within myself. So if I have to curse somebody, it's humanity. I'm really just stuck in the same bubble and I'm hurting myself. People, I don't know why they don't realize that it's like if you use different scenarios, you can start to see that it all plays out. It's like if I'm watching myself in the mirror and I stick up my right hand, in the mirror, it looks like my left hand sticking up. So it's never going to be a direct reflection. So whenever you see a reflection outside of you, it's not a direct reflection. But if you sit back and pay attention, you'll notice that it's a reflection, but it's not a direct reflection. And you'll realize, God damn, this is the imbalance within me. Why am I feeling this way? And believe it or not, look, your cells listen to you. When you start asking yourself questions, man, why am I feeling like this? Feel into it, and man, I promise you, you'll start getting answers. You'll start to feel like magically the entities are talking to you. It's you it's all this is coming within you. You get what I'm saying? There's people who are categorized schizophrenics, whatever it may be. Believe it or not, these people have urinated, and believe it or not, they've had higher concentrations of DMT in their urine. And why is that? When in actuality, what is DMT? Is dimethyltryptamine. Isn't that the God molecule, the shit that makes you hallucinate or see things and the things that people chase to actually have a mystical experience? Yep. You know what I'm saying? You have this on a light level when you sleep. Why is it not in abundance when you sleep? Why? First of all, your body's in fight or flight because you got a lot of inflammation in the body. And then aside from that, so much of the technology, the blue light that's going into your face actually corrupts the pineal gland into producing melatonin, which is the substance used to actually put you in a restful sleep. Your nervous system is shocked through, let's say, stresses and traumas of shit that matters to you, because if it doesn't matter, it won't materialize in your life, but your nervous system is shocked. So think about this, though. Sleep should be very, very sacred, to the point where you should never fall asleep you should be able to go to sleep, you know?
Yeah, no, I love that example about the rich guy and envious of them. I'm going to use that one. That's a really good way to put it, and so true too, because I think we've all done that with people we've seen that have something that we want or we wanted, and instead of saying good for them, I'm going to be like that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get there.
network.
I'm really happy that they worked so hard. And I know a lot of people, and I know when I was younger, I did it myself. Saying, "Oh, damn them! I hope their house burns down. They bought a new house. I hope that
Yeah,
breaks."
yeah. And that's cursing, isn't it? What do you do? Aren't you cursing doing that?
I am,
See,
but I
it's
did.
a curse, right?
Yeah, and at that time, I did not know those things. So I did it unwittingly because nobody ever taught me this stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, we got to wrap this up. We're about an hour and a half now, and I know it's later over there on the East Coast, and you got a long drive home and stuff. But I want to thank everybody that was in the chat. Remember, everybody, tomorrow night we'll be over on Nina's channel, Nina the Mystic Truther. Go over there, and we're going to be doing a show about Bruce Sees All. He passed away just recently at a very young age. I guess he was 49. He used to look at the moon, and maybe you've been subscribed to him. He had a big telescope, seen all kinds of things on there. Question is, did he die of natural causes? Was he kicked off a little too early in life? Or did he see too much? Did Bruce see too much? That's kind of my thoughts in a way. Good, bad, or otherwise, join us tomorrow night. Maybe we will see all too. Also, right now, we got Max Vision, who is on. Go over there and do a little bit of remote viewing. Here's his link in the chat. Improve your brain. He's probably just getting started with first or second, but join him up and do a little remote viewing. It's a lot of fun. Just sit there and you participate if you want in the chat or whatever. He's got such a cool, nice voice. It opens up that mind that we're talking about, the mind, and letting it relax and open up and letting that rest of the world, all that knowledge flow into you. And it's out there, and you can prove it to yourself by doing a little remote viewing and realizing that you are more than you are, and which is true, and all that. Well, thanks for coming on the Night Zigzag. We got really into that, and it opened my eyes up in a lot of ways too tonight. It gave me a lot more to think about. Yeah, because like I said, I think you're spot on with some of those things about the chakras and the love and the things that bind us and and going up in our mental capacity and the atom thing, and man, good information. I'm gonna have to rewatch my own show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me on, man, and I appreciate the people that were in the chat. I'm not able to see the chat, but the people I saw, thank you for participating.
Yes.
I saw Nina the Mystic, Mary Wins, and I think I saw a couple of more people there. But greetings to all. Thank you. Good to see you.
Herring has been in. Truth Seeker's been in I haven't seen Sunset. But let's see what else has been in here. Lucky Stone. We had Black Raven Meditation. Thank you for joining us tonight. And all the rest who watch it now and into the future. Oh, who else is here? Patricia Staton. Thank you for all of you for joining us tonight on this great show about the glue that binds us together. And if you have any comments or questions or any of that stuff that we talked about, email me. Link is in the description below, and let me know your thoughts on it. Maybe we'll have another show on something on this order, because we're all living in the matrix right now, and we're just getting the veil. It's important, I should say, to get the veil lifted above your eyes so you can really see what's going on. See that when you're envious, you're cursing people. See that you shouldn't be doing those things. Maybe the life and the joy and the love will come back to you because of the one most important thing out there. And you know what that is? Being the frequency you
And
want to
you
receive.
want to.
Yeah, that's what it is. Be the frequency you want to receive. And if you're not that frequency, well, then you're going to receive something else, and it might not be so pleasant. So project that frequency onto everyone else, as much as you possibly can. I try to reflect that in everything I do. Would I want to have that done to me? Would I?
But being pure heart, of course,
Yeah,
being
yeah,
pure heart,
exactly. And the
because you're not
better,
selling.
yeah, I'm not selling. I'm just giving and giving
Mhm.
and giving and giving. And the more I give out, the more I get refilled. And it's automatic. It's like you were saying before, you're putting yourself out there and the checks are coming in. You're trying, things are happening, but you manifest things and they come back. And the same's happened with me. I put out and things come back. And I never realized if I put out like that, they would come back. And it's not something that happens overnight. It
Right.
takes a little thought, and you have to really believe in yourself. But most of
Yeah.
all, be the frequency you want to receive and stay true to that. Just stay true to that, and it will come around. So with that, everybody, remember, go out and do something nice for yourself, for your neighbor, someone else. Make yourself filled up. Do something good, and you will just feel so much better. See y'all later, everyone. Catch you tomorrow night. Peace, everybody. Love y'all.
Peace.
And